Dick Cheney, the mindset of the madman who started government gang stalking. The mindset in the Bush-Cheney White House that gave rise to government gang stalking. To hell with consent of the governed. In an interview with ABC correspondent Martha Raddatz, Cheney responded to a question about public opinion polls showing that Americans had lost confidence in the Iraq War by simply saying, "So?" 2. To hell with individual liberty, freedom of thought and expression. To those who scare peace-loving people with phantoms of lost liberty, my message is this: your tactics only aid terrorists. They give ammunition to America's enemies and pause to America's friends. Bush Attorney General said that. You're either with us or against us, was the thinking articulated by Bush. The message in the Bush administration was, if you dissent, you're un-American. You're a traitor. Cheney saw himself as aligned with history in producing a new kind of man. Of Cheney, Ron Suskind said, Cheney truly believes he is in a conversation with history, and you can join that if you'd like or not, your choice. But that conversation will continue, and Cheney will carry forward. That's Cheney's view of the world and where he fits in it. And if he's the last man having that conversation with history, so be it. As long as he has his hands on the levers, he is going to drive those levers and drive the boat at top speed. Cheney believed the president should have a totally unfettered hand when it comes to national security and foreign affairs. This was the madness in the Bush-Cheney White House that would launch an attack on our social, legal, and political traditions. A foreign policy would grow up around it that was expansionist and aimed at global domination under the guise of keeping the world safe from terrorism. Cheney was quite prepared to sacrifice the Enlightenment values that underlie our Declaration of Independence and Constitution in the interest of his conversation with history, which he, Cheney, was destined to carry forward. This was the megalomaniac thinking out of which government gang stalking grew. Once you understand the essence of Cheney's madness, his belief he had a role to play in the march of history of a new world order run by bankers and international corporations and political elites, America's trajectory on the road to totalitarianism becomes understandable. In such a vision of the world, Enlightenment values must be obliterated. Ideas like consent of the government, checks and balances, individual liberty, freedom of speech and of the press. The executive was now the law. Power was deposited in that unitary place where it could be exercised to bring about Cheney's corporatist vision of the New World Order. There would be a shift in power from the military to the police, the creation of the American police state. The importance of notions of guilt and innocent fell to the wayside. Innocent dead were dismissed as collateral damage. In America's political repression through government gang stalking, due process was absent. Individual rights were subordinate to the developmental thrust of the march of history, which only Dick Cheney understood. This maniac thought his was a vision of perfect justice, where a new humanity would be formed, purged of individuality, individual thought, and speech which gets in the way of the historical process only Dick Cheney had insights into. In the paranoid world of Dick Cheney, the world was a very, very dangerous place, only to be fully understood by him. Terror had to be used to stabilize men, uncontrollable men. Torture and repressive programs like government gang stalking had to stabilize men so that nothing could get in the way of the march of history, this madman's vision of how the world must be. Totalitarianism replaces law with terror, and Cheney would get psychologists to be complicit in his torture regimes, in his government gang stalking. Like Hitler, he would create a mass movement. Not the brown shirts, but the red shirts. He would expand and radicalize our neighborhood watch groups and turn them, and our first responders, into a government gang stalking horde. All psychologists know to get people on board with your agenda, with Cheney's hidden globalist agenda, you get them to do just a little thing in the surface of your vision, like gang stalking fellow citizens. Now the masses are on your side, unaware of how they are being manipulated to fit into the vision of a madman, unaware that in Cheney's world, individuals are only valued insofar as they carry out his vision of the movement of history. The parts are unimportant. Only the whole is important. A gang stalker today might be a target tomorrow, and the masses know this and buy into the terror that is the essence of all totalitarian regimes. Hannah Arendt, the authority on totalitarianism, believed people are potentially in the way. You can recast people so they are nothing more than the movement of nature or history, nothing more than the embodiments of this flowing progressive law. Along the way, you eliminate groups of people with the way you interpret the law. You relate it to, will they pose any practical problem along with the regime itself? It substitutes for the boundaries and channels of communication of individual men a band of iron which holds them so tightly together that it is as though their plurality had disappeared into one man of gigantic proportions. In such a way of thinking, human freedom slows down the flow of history. Eliminating human freedom frees natural or historical forces to act as they would without human interference. An intense regulation of individual behavior so everyone is functioning as this undifferentiated mass is necessary. Such was the thinking implicit in the creation of government gang stalking, which operates today in total secrecy all over America and in NATO countries. Was the war in Iraq worth it? Yes, said the madman Dick Cheney. His ideological thinking is unmoored from sensory experience. This madman doesn't operate on an empirical plane.